Yesterday, Premier Mark McGowan announced that today he will introduce a bill into the WA State Parliament to amend the Emergency Management Act 2005. Those that follow this page will know that I did a stream about this a few weeks back saying that this day would come, and here we are. Premier Mark McGowan has said the intent of the bill is to allow for the ongoing management of COVID-19 beyond the state of emergency, which has been in place since March 15, 2020. This has given the McGowan government extraordinary powers to impose rules and restrictions with the stroke of a pen by a non-elected state government bureaucrat, the Chief Health Officer, Andrew Robinson, where the health advice and the science relied upon for the perpetual rolling two-weekly renewals for the state of emergency, which neither the Chief Health Officer, both Health Ministers Roger Cook and Amber Jade Sanderson, the State Emergency Coordinator, the WA Vaccination Commander and the Commissioner of Police at the time, Chris Dawson, and for those that not in WA, Chris Dawson has been appointed the Governor of WA from July this year, and also Premier Mark McGowan, have never made any of the information available for public scrutiny. This bill, if passed to law, will enable the State Emergency Coordinator to make a temporary COVID declaration to continue managing the pandemic with sensible measures such as mask wearing and isolation requirements. The new law, as stated by Premier McGowan, is fit for purpose and allows for the COVID-19 measures that would have kept West Australians safe and strong during its world-leading response to the pandemic. Measures that the Premier says, well, have a listen to what he says.
And some of this commentary out there by people external to the Parliament is frankly wrong. It's just wrong. Now, we won't keep these rules in place for longer than we need to. The reality is, of course, the state of emergency is required in order to allow us to put in place these rules. The rules are relatively light touch.
I'm not sure what Premier McGowan defines as light touch. However, I'd argue where there is no consent, you have coercion. I still remember vividly, as a result of McGowan putting a gun to healthcare and construction workers' heads regarding compulsory COVID trial vaccinations for WA workers with his no jab, no job mandates. Premier McGowan, if that's your definition of light touch, then I'd hate to see what your definition of heavy-handed is. It's anticipated the temporary COVID-19 declaration can only be made if the State of Emergency Coordinator is satisfied that COVID-19 poses a risk to the safety and the community such that it requires a coordinated response to prevent the loss of life or harm to the health of the community. The new legislation is likely to automatically expire in 2 years' time, and it is likely to allow a temporary COVID-19 declaration for 3-month periods at a time. It's proposed the legislation, the new law, the temporary COVID-19 declaration, will not allow for the closure of state borders or require an application to enter into Western Australia from other states or territories. So it wouldn't surprise me if many of you feel that this is a good thing. But wait, there's more. It's likely the new law will allow for the non-medically trained bureaucrat, the WA Police Commissioner, to retain the power to make declarations about mask wearing in aged care and disability care settings and stay-home orders for positive cases. Yesterday, Opposition Leader Mia Davies has made public comment about her concern Premier Mark McGowan has advised her the new legislation is to pass through the lower house by this evening. Opposition Leader Mia Davies has accused the government of abusing its majority in both houses by denying the opposition proper time to scrutinise the bill. What do you think about that, and do you share her concern? Well, you should, regardless of your politics. Earlier this year, Leader of the House David Templeman, this guy,
Hello, Speaker, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. It's a story of some downs and ups, of a year which finished with our share of the GST for our Treasury. That's been the year in Parliament. Members hearing without listening, members giving speeches that no one ever hears, and no one cares. So, Mr. Speaker, close the gate. Do it now, lest it's too late. Get the crayfish and the sparkling wine. All the members form a Congo line.
And I will say, when I shot this footage on the steps of Parliament back in December 2021 and produced the following, which I'll now show you to the sound of silence, well before David Templeman's tone-deaf rendition.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. Raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence, and the people bowing prayed to the neon god they made, and the sign flashed out its warning, and the words that it was forming, and the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence.
It's you, David, that remains deaf in the corridors of Parliament. Back to May this year, when you said, David that is, tabled a motion without notice regarding new COVID laws, and he said the following, and I quote, "We need to introduce legislation that will respond and allow us to continue to respond to the challenge that we face. That is why this motion is a bill and it's being introduced. It needs to be treated urgently because we want to make sure that we can swiftly make measures to continue to keep people as safe as and when they are required." So I feel it's important to highlight, as Hansard would confirm, the leader of the WA Liberal Party, Dr. David Honey, has said in response, and I quote, "I think we were informed just over 24 hours ago that a bill would be coming before the House. There were no details whatsoever, none." That's what Dr. David Honey said. To be fair, in mounting some opposition to McGowan's dictatorship, Dr. Honey also made the following further statement in his opening response to this motion without notice, and I feel a very adept summation of the current continuance of the WA state of emergency, and I quote, WA state of emergency laws do not require any written reasoning to be shared on the public record. We have been told it's the Chief Health Officer's advice. It's the Chief Health Officer's advice. We have been told that time and time again, but no one can seem to get to it, so we don't know whether it's the Chief Health Officer's advice or the Premier is making it up as he goes and then getting the Chief Health Officer to work in that advice to agree with the Premier. That is what the whole of Western Australia public thinks, end quote. Well, I, for one, in the absence of any of the documents being made available, as I've previously mentioned, agreed wholeheartedly with Dr. Honey on this one. What do you think? In the coming days, I don't expect that you'll hear mainstream media reporting on this new legislation, other than to say it's been passed and introduced by the McGowan government. Time will tell exactly how intrusive McGowan's proposed COVID response laws will be. I want to end with a little bit more of what Dr. David Honey, the leader of the WA Liberal Party, has said on this, and I quote, "It's not proper process. This motion will not give the opposition the opportunity to scrutinise this bill properly. This is a substantial bill covering very significant restrictions on people's rights and liberties in the community. The Minister may say it is appropriate that we can debate some of that later when we debate the substantive motion. However, this will not give the opportunity to do it properly. It is wrong. It is an abuse of your power in this Parliament," end quote. So I personally think, for one, that even those that are in favour of Labor's politics, that they would be very concerned if how this reflects on the democracy and one's rights. Even if you complied with all of Premier Mark McGowan's demands regarding his COVID response, you still found yourself subject to lockdowns, missing significant family and community events, unable to leave WA or return if you didn't make it back to WA before McGowan's iron-fisted border closures, and of course, you were unable to buy toilet paper. I will be staying tuned to this development in the coming days to see how this unfolds. However, I don't see the new laws will look pretty. And here is why I say this, and I'll finish up with this insight. When David Templeman first tabled this motion, at the very beginning as a result of Dr. David Honey's opening address, the acting speaker was required to intervene. This is what was said, and I quote, "As this motion is without notice to suspend standing orders, it will need an absolute majority in order to succeed. If I hear a dissenting voice, I will be required to divide the Assembly. There is a dissenting voice," end quote. As a result of that and understanding the workings of Parliament, there was a division where there were 41 members that voted on your future rights and liberties. 38 voted in favour of allowing this motion, which will now see today a bill introduced which will become new law, as there was sadly only 3 that voted against it. As I mentioned in my previous stream a few weeks ago, you only need to consider the Dan Andrews Labor Party's introduction of similar legislation via their Pandemic Management Act to see how much of an overreach into Victorians' lives that bill caused, that will see the same overreach into the lives of West Australians. I'm Lindsay from Freedom Media WA. Thank you for watching and commenting. As always, if you have felt that this stream is of some value, as mainstream media will not provide you with this detail, please share, and hopefully you can see more West Australians need to become engaged with what those that were elected to represent the people of Western Australia and how they propose to rule your lives. If you haven't done so already, please like and follow the page. That way you will get notifications of live streams with more content like this. Wherever you find yourself, please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Brought to you by Freedom Media WA, where journalism should never be a government narrative.